to a Talk IT tutorial on creating a simple Java game. So this can be the Dungeon of Doom. It's lab free, so we've talked about understanding the game, designing the architecture, and then we're looking at the sort of the client setup, and we're actually going to create a ClientGUI. This one isn't particularly codey, but it's just sort of a setup and get everything ready to start coding. So we're going to build it from scratch. I'm going to be using Eclipse. So the first thing we're going to do is open up Eclipse, going to set up our packages and put in our classes for those. So I'm just opening up Eclipse. I'm going to create a new project. I'm just going to call this Dungeon of Doom Trial, like so. Just click Finish. You'll see it has a source file there and a system library file. So under store, source, we want to create some packages. So I'm going to create one there called DOD. Under DOD, we're going to have two classes. We're going to have the ClientGUI. Well, we're not just going to have two classes. We're going to have quite a lot more than this, but for now, server GUI. I'm actually going to skip a little bit ahead of the tutorial on this one. Actually, while I'm here, create something called client logic and server logic. Whoops. Server logic and our client server controller. Okay, this is sort of with our MVC ideas. We have model view controller. So we've got our views, which are the GUI that pass off to the logic, and then the controller will go through to anything on the back end. So this is where the sort of server part takes over. So we've got DOD, so then we need to have a new package, and we're going to call that DOD.game. Under DOD.game, we're going to have a class called Game Logic. This is going to be one of our largest classes, and is going to contain sort of the most amount of business code, as you could call it. So DOD.game, and then we're going to have DOD.game.items. So add that package, DOD.game.items, and this is going to have a class in it called game item, like so. Just making sure I've spelt that right. And then we're going to have gold, health, lantern, shield and sword. So just adding all of those in. Gold, health. I don't know the shortcut keys to these at the moment. I don't normally use Eclipse. I'm more of an IntelliJ person myself. Gold, health, shield and sword. Hence you can use any sort of IDE you want, but I'm using Eclipse for now. I just think it's quite simple, it's easy to see, but for more really complex applications I quite like IntelliJ. Shield and sword. Okay, so we've also done that, and I sort of skipped over the step 4 here, but it's effectively we're creating multi-threading. So we're going to have multiple clients, one server. We're going to need to be able to handle the passing of information, hence the sort of MVC idea. The GUI itself, we're going to be creating command line to start, and then later on we're going to make that a proper graphical user interface using Swing, which is somewhat a little bit outdated at the moment, and most people would start to use HTML5 and CSS for their front ends. But I've just created Swing because it's just really quick and easy to do. So starting with the ClientGUI, let's start importing some things. So we know it's going to need a buff reader because it's going to need to take some input from the console. So we've got a buffer reader, we're going to need an IO exception and an input stream reader as well. So, let's open that up. So ClientGUI. So importing that, it's underlining it at the moment, just saying, look, sorry, these aren't used. We're going to have some private variables. So the buffer reader, the string for server IP, and an integer for the port. So just put those at the top. Drop those back too. And then we have a try here. So effectively this is just when it's initializing, it's going to be on the constructor. It's going to just try and get the server IP and the port value when we start it up. So let's put in sync here. And ClientGUI. We have our try in there. Catch, cool. So try system.out.println, enter the server IP, read it in, enter the port number and pass that as an integer, and then we have our exceptions there for that. Okay, so we've got those. Okay, I've just pressed for your information Control-Shift-F, which just formats everything. We're adding another method here called take input and act. This is going to be something that's always going to be true, and effectively it's just going to sit there. It's going to read in what we type, and depending on that we're then going to act upon it. So if it's N, we're going to move north. If it's pick up, we're going to pick up. And these are the signals that we're going to be sending towards the server. So going back, so inside the class, public void take input and act. So while true, system.out.println command, taking the input message, and then depending on that we do whatever we need. Exit will just system.exit with a 0 signal, just to say that everything's gone fine and that was on purpose, that we decided to quit. And the last thing is the main method for this, because obviously we want it to be a runnable, it's a graphical user interface. So it's public static void main string args, and we're going to instantiate the client graphical user interface, and we're going to try client.takeinput.act. So here is the main for that. Okay, so we should be now able to run this. It's just saying we don't use the server IP and port values. We set them here, but at the moment they're not actually being used anywhere, but they will be later on. So just try and run that. Please enter the server name or IP. 127.0.0.1. Okay, and please enter the port number, and then command N, and it'll just carry on, and then we can type in exit, and we're done. So that's the ClientGUI, very simply command line interface done at the moment. So that's lab 3. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you move on to lab 4.